This is Meet the Mayor's Desk. This is my second one with the same person I met with many months ago. It's been a busy year and I haven't had an opportunity to sit with a lot of people, but Senator Beck is here with us today and she's got a lot to tell us about from the state, and we're not going to dilly-dally and go into a whole bunch of stuff. I'm going to go right to it. Welcome.
Nice to see you, Mayor Cook.
As well as you.
Congratulations on your re-election.
Thank you very much. Let's get right into the nitty-gritty and talk about senior citizens and their property taxes and hopefully a freeze at some point.
Yes. So the state of New Jersey has something called the Senior Property Tax Freeze, which I'm sure you've heard of.
My father-in-law, I think, was a participant in it.
Oh, well then you are very familiar with it. I always like to talk about it a little bit to make sure that the information is out there. So if you are a resident of the state of New Jersey for 10 years and you're older than 65 and you make less than $70,000 a year, you can qualify to have your property taxes frozen. You make an application. The applications are always due before October 15th of whichever year you're in, and that becomes your base year. And then each year that follows, if your property taxes should go up, that money gets reimbursed back to you and essentially freezing your property taxes.
Yeah, my father-in-law, he passed away in February, but he was frozen he was 89. So he was frozen from when he returned from Jersey, from when he lived in Florida. I want to say he returned in 15 years. His property taxes were frozen when he applied. So it's a good program then.
It's a good program. Some people are concerned about the income threshold. They feel it should be higher. We have about $220 million in this year's state budget to fund this program for our senior citizens. And I think it's one of the most worthwhile property tax programs that we have in this state because we do want to keep those people here. They raised their families here, they have their homes here, they've invested, and we want to keep them. We don't want to lose them to Florida.
No, Florida, South Carolina, Tennessee, all the tax-free, Delaware, which is right down. Friends of ours moved down to Delaware a couple of years ago. How long has the threshold been at 70,000?
So there was 1 year, about 5 budget cycles ago, before New Jersey went into a bad fiscal situation, where it was raised up to 80,000. That only happened 1 year.
So it's been lowered to 70 from 80?
Yes.
Okay. So
Yes.
it's not indexed to inflation or anything?
It is not, and as I said, that's joint income.
Right.
So, some people don't qualify because of the income threshold, but many people do. I mean, we had thousands and thousands of seniors that subscribed to the Senior Property Tax Freeze program, and as a result, can stay in New Jersey.
Well, this is good information for me. I knew there was a program out there. I just thought it applied to veterans, because the people I had spoken with who were in it were all veterans from World War, Korean War, Korean conflict, Vietnam War. So, and I've had 2 or 3 residents reach out to me as I'm run into them and say, what are we doing about property taxes? I'm retired now. So this is good information, allows me to pass along. Because people don't want to go on the internet and do the searching, especially the state website. It's
confusing. There's too much information. It's overwhelming for people. Hey, the other thing, as you mentioned, veterans, is if you are on Social Security disability, but you're not 65, you can also qualify for the freeze.
Okay.
So maybe that is why you had the experience of having some veterans say, oh yeah, I'm in the program.
Right.
Because if you are on Social Security disability, you also can qualify for the Senior Property Tax Freeze, even though you're not a senior.
Yeah. Well, I want to stay here. I don't know if I can, but we'll see what happens. I got many more years to worry about it. Let's move on to another topic, pension forfeitures, when people get caught with their hand in the cookie jar, for less than a better term.
Well, it's kind of interesting because, in New Jersey, we've had several years where there were many public officials that went to jail, right? And were caught doing things during their tenure that were illegal, which got them convicted and in jail. But many of those still got to collect a taxpayer-funded pension, which, I know makes my skin crawl And I think the average taxpayer in the state reacts with rage, and they should. If you're convicted of a crime and you are serving the public, we should not then fund your retirement. And so I've had this bill in for a couple of years now. But to me, as we're looking to curb the cost of living in the state of New Jersey, there are many things we can do. This, to me, seems like a really easy one. We should not be funding.
What prevents a bill from moving forward? It's common sense to me.
Well, you know, I guess some of those that have been convicted have friends in the legislature, so, yeah, there's that. But,
Okay.
but clearly, you know, this is common sense. I think any person that you could ask, you shouldn't be having the taxpayers fund your pension if you were convicted of a crime, and that crime related to the public office that you held, right?
I don't disagree.
A mayor goes to jail, and then we spend the next 30 years funding his retirement. To me, it's just wrong.
Well, I work in New York City, and so I read the papers there, and they have a lot of officials that are going through the litigation process now, Sheldon Silver, a couple others, and they haven't touched on that yet, but they have touched on others who have been convicted, have spent time in jail or paid a fine, who
Right.
can collect a pension there as well. And I've heard the dialogue go on there in terms of the newspaper, and it seems to have the same no traction there as it does in New Jersey.
Well, I'm not giving up. I think this is a moral issue, so I'm not giving up.
To me, it falls into, and I always tell people that when they say, well, how do you make decisions, Tom? I say, well, what's the right thing to do?
Yes.
Okay, you know, I had my parents raised me the right way, I think they raised me the right way, and you know, you have those ethical decisions throughout life, and you know, what's the right thing to do? To me, this is an easy one.
This is a no-brainer, but yes.
Okay, stuff like that. I read in the paper, drives me absolutely insane.
know,
I just
me too.
read, and it's not related to this, but Sandusky, the gentleman from Penn State football, who was found guilty of molesting all those children, their pension board ruled that he must keep his pension.
Oh,
It was just ruled because,
that's horrendous.
but it wasn't it's a quasi-state funded pension. It was some legality.
Unbelievable.
And it's $5,000 a year. It's
Unbelievable.
not a bad piece of change, actually. Going on to trying to get property tax reform, what else are we doing? Because I have to tell you, the last 8 weeks I've written or responded to 3 emails and 6 letters that came into us saying I'm on fixed income, I'm this and that.
Yes.
What are we doing? Now, when I run into people in Freehold Township and they run to me and say, Tom, what about my taxes? And I say to them, I said, listen, the Freehold Township Committee controls roughly 15 cents of your tax dollar. They go, that's it? I says, yeah, if your taxes are $10,000, $1,500 gets you our parks, our police, and the full body of the municipal services. Well, where do the rest go? So a lot of residents don't know that another 50 to 60% is schools, and that's Freehold Township Schools, Freehold Regional High School District, the county, open space, and the fire districts. So then they'll say, well, what do I have to do? And I say, well, you can go to the school board meetings and find out what's going on there, but there's very little that you can do to a degree because things are pretty much fixed
Well,
to a degree.
there are some things that we should do, that we can do. First and foremost, the aggregation of sick and vacation time by public employees has gotten a lot of headlines. It was something that was negotiated into contracts all over the place in the state of New Jersey for many, many years, and I really think it went under the radar. We need to have a state policy that requires that if you are employed in a public position, that you cannot accumulate over the course of your 30 career a $700,000 payout when you retire. State employees are limited at $15,000,
We have that in Freehold Township as well.
and Freehold Township, and some municipalities like Freehold Township have acted to implement that on their own, but many have not. And that's a huge driver for property taxes. You could have one employee retire with, say, a $300,000 payout, and in that single year could raise all the citizens' taxes by 3 cents.
especially if they didn't budget for it.
I mean, 3 cents, I'm talking about per hundred
Right,
assessed value, I'm
exactly.
sorry, but, so that has been on the docket, it has the support of the governor, both sides of the aisle have agreed that we need to act on this, it's time, it
So
really
what's
is
holding it
time.
up?
There was some discussion about if 15,000 is too high or too low. At this point, frankly, I don't care. I think 15,000 is a standard that the state employees have. It would provide uniformity throughout. You know, some people said it should be 0, some people said it should be 5,000. To me, the longer that this is delayed, the more that we're going to have to pay out. And we need to solve this issue. And it is one small piece of trying to deal with property taxes.
Does this grandfather, if they went through, would it grandfather all those who have existing payout deals?
The Attorney General of the state of New Jersey has said that you cannot take away that, but for unused vacation or sick time, you can require that employee, while they're still working,
Right.
to use their existing accumulated sick and vacation before they accumulate any more. So in other words, I could stop it at this point in time,
Right.
and you can't accumulate any more going forward, and you have to use what you've already gathered. So it's one thing that definitely affects property taxes that we need to address. There are a couple other things like that. For example, double dipping. You know, we know that in the state of New Jersey, 16 out of 21 sheriffs and 37 deputy sheriffs, thankfully not Sheriff Golden does not do this, but have a full-time salaried job and also are collecting a full-time pension. So, for example, the sheriff in Bergen County, he makes $138,000 a year. He also gets paid from Emerson Borough $130,000 a year in a pension. So, look, the point of a pension is to support you when you can't work anymore.
Correct.
Right, that's the premise. And the only way they've gotten away with it is by moving to a different pension system. So it's a double dipping. You are a police officer, you retire. You're collecting your pension and then you become a state employee. Now you are in a different pension system and therefore you can collect both a salary and a pension. A police officer couldn't do that if he stayed in his own. It's a weird little loophole. If he stayed in his own pension,
Right.
if he went back to being a police officer, they'd suspend his pension.
Correct.
But it's a weird loophole in New Jersey. We have
Another loophole.
elected officials who are Joe DiVincenzo, the Essex County executive, who collects a full-time salary as that executive and also collects a $90,000 a year pension. While he's an elected and currently serving, it's crazy and we can't afford it. It's a driver for property taxes.
Well, it's funny because people amongst friends, and I just say, they're saying, you know, what can we do? I says, we have to recognize there's no available money floating out there. So for anyone, the state level, whatever, to say, hey, we're going to slash your taxes, there's no money to cover the loss. So it's a challenge, and these little things taken as a whole could save us some noticeable money,
Yes.
or at least tell us, or tell the residents or the citizens of the state that we're moving in the right direction.
Yes. One of the other, and maybe not last, but you know, if you're trying to there is no silver bullet.
There isn't.
It's going to be a series of reforms that we have to embrace to control property taxes and make it more affordable. And one of those things is the cost of health care for public employees, including myself, right? So it's expensive. The federal government looked at our health plans for our public employees in the state of New Jersey, and they call them platinum plans.
Yes, where are they?
Beyond Cadillac. They are so generous and so expensive that the federal government is going to fine the state of New Jersey $780 million by 2018 if we don't bring them in line.
Yeah.
Because they're so generous. So that is an area, I mean, at a state, local, county level, the taxpayers are all funding that. And, you know, we know healthcare is expensive, but it doesn't have to be a platinum plan where you're not participating in the cost of the premium at a significant level. All the private sector people do, and it's a driver for property taxes as well. It's a reform that we have to do because the federal government is going to fine us almost $1 billion if we don't make that correction. And I think there's bipartisan support for taking a look at that.
I just don't know if it's gonna happen in our foreseeable future.
Well, I think what will drive it is the hammer of the federal government fining the state of New Jersey almost $1 billion. I think that will force that conversation because we don't have it.
Well,
We don't have an extra billion.
Right.
We just don't.
I know we don't.
We don't.
I think everyone kind of
Yeah.
knows they don't, the state doesn't. There is, I've heard rumblings that there is pushback at the legislative level at the federal government to rescind that piece of the Obamacare bill because it affects more so the unions who supported Obamacare, the implementation of it.
Construction unions.
Yes.
Not public employee unions.
No, construction unions. And
Correct.
they are working on their legislators to get that turned because those plans are even equal to or even better than.
Right.
I have a friend of mine, his family, I want to say he's in a carpenters union, but it could be electricians union. They have full coverage with, I think, $100 deductible, and that includes braces, full braces, which when I worked at GE, they covered braces up to 50 cents on the dollar. So no matter what braces you got, they were only going to pay half. But he covered everything.
Dental coverage you're talking
Dental
about.
coverage, his medical, was just very, very lucrative, and it was just, and he goes, we're not losing that.
Yeah.
We worked too hard for that, so, interesting, okay.
Yeah, it's, so, there are many things in aggregate that we can do to control costs and make it more affordable to live here, and I think we have to. Where we can't lose our citizens to other states, we want them to stay here with their kids, to retire here, to have their careers here. So it's something that I invest a lot of time in and take very seriously.
Well, I'm experiencing the result. I have 3 sons, 29, 28, and 23, who all went to school in Pennsylvania, who all live in Pennsylvania. My third one just moved there 2 months ago. Basically, they had jobs there, okay, for their field, but now they look and they said, Dad, we can't afford to move back, okay? One son pays $400 a month rent, but he's with a few people. Another son pays $600 a month rent in a ginormous apartment, and the third son pays, I think, $800 a month rent. Here, for any of those equal, would be significantly more money. Forget the car
Right.
insurance element and all the other elements. So, and we were just talking, I was with them this Friday, and I said, you guys ever think about moving back? No. We want you to get a beach house, Dad, and we'll come visit on the weekends.
Well, we don't want that. We want our young people
I
back
do.
here.
We want them
do.
back
We want
here.
them back.
All right, we've beaten that to death. Let's just touch briefly on park testing. My wife works at a school,
Sure.
and a lot of parents hit me up on it. I don't know enough about it, other than it's standardized tests. And what's your take on it, if you will, or what's going on?
So we just received the results of the statewide results for park, and it was, of course, the first year that we did it. 99% participation rate
Really?
across the state
Okay.
among our students. And of course, the first time our students have taken that exam, or taken an exam, an assessment exam, on a computer. And we did it successfully. There are things that have to be reformed, and I've spent a lot of time on this in my different school districts. The time it takes to give the exam is too much. It's taking too much away from kids being in the classroom.
Right.
The time it takes to administer. Within the schools, yes, it was new, and so it was probably a little more
Learning
cumbersome
curve.
this year, but there's also a sense that we can streamline just the administrative process overall and make this an easier thing to administer. That said, the results were not bad. I think a little lower than than our previous assessment, but not bad. Roughly 50% of the kids were averaging around 50% in English, a little lower in math, being 50% being you're attaining the level of learning in English. We still have a lot of work to do. I think the history we've had is that with all of these exams, the first time you give it, the scores are lower.
Yes.
And over time, as the children become more used to it, that we see those scores go up, and that's my expectation. For teachers who were to have the scores count as part of their assessment, that will apply only to teachers between the 4th and 8th grade.
Okay.
And it will only count for 10%.
Okay.
And then the rest will be in classroom observation and also the progress of their students over the school year. For teachers that are in high school, there will not be that 10% isn't actually part of their evaluation
All
this
right.
year. So that's been suspended for them.
I'm certain most people don't even know that element of it. You know, parents that I ran into were just concerned, oh, got this testing, et cetera, and I don't know
Yeah.
if it's worth it, and it just, you know, doesn't hurt, okay? Might have been too long, it might have taken up a lot of classroom time, but it's good to know what the kids are doing to some degree.
It was clearly imperfect,
Yes.
right? I mean, it needs a little reworking, and they're going to. The Department of Education has said, no question about it, we want to make sure that it doesn't take kids away from classroom time that they need, and that we administer it in a streamlined way. And so they're going to make those changes, and I think that's a good thing.
All right, good. You have been in the paper about the LNG thing. Now, I know recent headlines has it canceled, but why don't we talk about that just a bit, because I think most residents have no idea about anything about that, other than what they read in the paper.
Yeah.
And it was probably just the headline, they didn't read the rest of the article.
It's an interesting proposal. Liquefied natural gas. They bring it in ships that are as long as the Empire State Building is tall. They're huge. And they chill the natural gas to such a temperature that it becomes a gas. It's highly flammable and volatile. And they were going to put a facility off the coast of Long Branch. This facility would have created no jobs for New Jersey. It would have not given us any new energy resource. All of that resource was intended to go to Long Island, and we would have received no economic benefit, except for to have this massive industrialization of the ocean off of Long Branch, in the commercial shipping channels, where recreational commercial fishermen go, and in near one of the busiest shipping channels we have in the world, right? The New York Harbor.
Yes.
So I've looked very carefully at this proposal. This has been around for a while, since 2007, and I've been active in opposing it since 2009. What we learned is in Massachusetts, they have 2 facilities just like this that are completely not used.
Why?
Because these folks, we don't even know who they are. They have all of their bank accounts in the Cayman Islands.
Oh.
So we don't even know who's backing the project. We don't have a name or a company or anything. They intend to take, we believe, this resource and export it, not import it. That this would not stabilize, I mean, right now the United States needs very little energy.
Right.
You know, with, frankly, with all the fracking that's happened in Pennsylvania and across the country, we're doing quite well when it comes to our energy resources. So there's really a line of thinking that this was being constructed simply to take our energy resources and export it across the ocean, which doesn't make sense.
No.
We want to preserve it for our own country,
I would think so.
I would think. So the 2 that are in Gloucester, Massachusetts, have been really sitting fallow, with the exception of one small shipment in 2011. They've been abandoned. And anyway, I was very happy. Governor Christie vetoed this proposal. The governors have the purview to veto the proposal unilaterally, and he did so in 2011. Governor Cuomo just did so last Thursday, and I think it's a positive for those of us that enjoy the Jersey Shore, knowing that we would have had no benefit out of this and taken on all the rest.
Yeah, it just doesn't make sense. Whenever you do anything, you want to have a benefit to the host state, town, community, whatever. And, okay, well, that's good.
And kind of interestingly, Long Island So their governing body passed a resolution in opposition too. So they were supposed to be the beneficiary of the project, and they opposed it. And there were 25,460 some residents from New York and New Jersey that also came to the public hearings and opposed it.
How many thousand?
More than 25,000.
Oh my gosh. So it definitely had no support from the public.
There were only 17 people that testified in favor and 25,000 in opposition. Yeah, it was, I think people, when they looked at the facts, just couldn't find a reason why we would want this.
Yeah, I mean, you didn't sell it to me with those, I mean,
Right.
those are objective positions. It's not like you're biased. There's no return for New Jersey.
No,
The fuel's going to Long Island if they even allowed it, but more to the point, you couldn't figure out who they, I mean, that's just mind-boggling.
Yeah.
It's kind of scary.
it was, right, it was a little unsettling.
Right.
Because they wouldn't disclose who they were.
That's all I had on my list. Do you have anything you want to talk about?
No, just to say that you and your colleagues, Mayor Koch, are doing a very nice job in Freehold
you.
Township, that I know how hard you work and,
Well, it's funny, we a couple weeks ago, we had someone was complaining, Tom, what do you do? Like, how do you fill your day? And it was a Saturday. And we were at Michael J. Tide Park at 7:45 in the morning for the ribbon cutting of the new park, the new playground. We left there and went to Fright Fest, soccer tournament at Jackson Mills, and then we drove over the other side of town to Opetot Park. There were roughly 14,000 visitors to Freehold Township that day for that soccer event. And then we left there to go to the Colts Neck Firehouse for Food Stock, which is a group of Freehold Township residents and
Right.
volunteers that raise food. And they raised, when I left, they were at 40,000 pounds.
it's great.
I talked to him on Tuesday, and they were 47,000, but they had a bunch of donations in queue that hadn't been weighed in. So their goal was to reach 50,000. They hoped to reach 50,000, and they were confident they were going to do that. So I didn't get home till 5:30. I showered and changed, and we ran out again. Well, my wife and I ran out for a quick bite to eat. You live that life, so you know more so than I do. So
Well, I'm glad you brought up Thanksgiving, and because, you know, the Food Bank of Monmouth and Ocean County does the best they can, but their demand for emergency food has been growing each and every year, and so it's great that you got involved, and
well, John.
and we all should. I know I you know, in my hometown of Red Bank, lunch break is our local pantry.
Well, that's who
and-
Food Stock gives a good portion of their food
Yeah,
to.
and it's needed. I mean, we have so many, and you think we're in Monmouth County, but, you know, there are many that are having a hard time making ends meet, and, yeah, it's a time to give thanks for what we have and to help those who may not be so fortunate.
Absolutely. Well, I thank you for being here. I just
Thank
want to
you,
say
Mayor.
to the residents that in December, I'm going to meet with the First Aid. Real First Aid's going to come in at my request. It's that time of year they're raising money. Most residents think our First Aid and emergency services people are paid personnel, and they're not. They're all volunteers. So I want to get the First Aid on here so we can chat a little bit and talk about that, and hopefully get our residents that can afford it to write a check to donate to them in their fundraising quarter of the year. So I want to thank you for being here, and on behalf of the rest of the governing body, Deputy Mayor Anthony Amiano, Committeeman David Salkin, Lester Preston, Committeewoman Bar McMorrow, we thank you again and wish everyone a happy and healthy Thanksgiving.